Hello, my name is Yusra and I'm going to talk to you about the difference between theory, hypothesis and model. So here's our agenda. First off, we're going to start with the difference between each of them, and then we'll conclude to a small comparison that keeps the difference between them clear in our head, and finally we'll apply this to a very interesting context. So there we go. Let's see. A hypothesis is a proposed explanation for a phenomenon. A hypothesis always needs further testing and must be falsifiable, meaning that it can be proven wrong. However, the words hypothesis and theory are often used synonymously. A hypothesis is not the same as a theory. On the other side, a theory is a tested, well-sustained, unifying explanation for a set of verified proven factors. So let's illustrate the difference between them through more explanation. First off, both hypothesis and the theory describe why things happen. However, a theory is always backed up by evidence, while a hypothesis is just a suggested possible outcome that is testable and falsifiable. To take an example from daily life, suppose you discover that your car will not start. You might say, my car does not start because the battery is low. This is your first hypothesis. You may then check whether the lights were left on or if the engine makes a particular sound and check the battery. So if you discover that the battery is not low, you might attempt another hypothesis. You might say, the battery is not broken, this is simply not my car. On the other hand, theory. Theory is something that has been confirmed through repeated experimental tests. So gravity is a theory. However, we always use the expression it's just a theory in our daily life, this is very wrong. What we mean is it's just a hypothesis, because a theory is proven under all sets of circumstances and has been confirmed through repeated experimental tests. So we all know that theory is always applicable, that's why we never jump off of a building. So that's why a theory is different from a hypothesis. So let's see what a model is. A model is useful in situations when it is known that the hypothesis has at least limited validity, and it is made of the composition of concepts to help people know, understand, or simulate a subject that the model represents. So let's see. Have you ever heard of Hooke's law or Hooke's model? No, not that one. The other one. This one. It simply states that the force exerted by a mass attached to a spring is proportional to the amount the spring is stretched. So we know that the principle is only valid for small amounts of stretching, because the law fails when the spring is stretched beyond its elastic limit. It can break. So this is a model, not a theory or a hypothesis, because it fails at a certain point under a certain condition. However, it is very useful for prediction of simple harmonic motion. That's why models are versatile or changeable under different sets of circumstances. So let's conclude to a small comparison between all of the three. A hypothesis is something that is tested on limited data, it can be tested and it can be proven wrong. While a theory is something very unifying, proven under many sets of conditions and all sorts of data, and it is always supported by an evidence. While a model is a composition of concepts, it simulates an object and the behavior of that object under different conditions, and it is versatile and changeable. Let's conclude to applying this to an interesting context. Let's apply this to horoscopes. Who doesn't know horoscopes and sees it every day in newspaper? Horoscopes is simply the belief that relative positions of stars and planets have some influence over the lives of humans. So believers call it a science, while non-believers call it nonsense. You probably know that the horoscopes and can be found in almost every newspaper. So horoscopes say that there are 12 signs. Each sign has certain characteristics for people. So let's see. Astrology, or the science of horoscopes. Can this be called a theory or just a hypothesis? The most thorough study that has been concluded in such context is called the time twins. It has been done in London in 2003, where researchers tracked more than 2,000 babies after they were born for several decades. They were just born within minutes from each other, which is why they're called time twins. So scientists tracked their occupation, their anxiety levels, and many other characteristics that our astrology claims that it can be determined by when they were born. However, the study concluded that there was no evidence of similarities between such babies. And actually, one of the scientists that participated in that study was a former astrologer, and he stopped being an astrologer after reaching this conclusion. And astrologers responded by saying that this study is simplistic and highly selective and does not cover all of the research. So whether you believe in astrology or you don't believe in horoscopes and don't see it every day in newspaper to know your luck and what will happen to you, this means that horoscopes are a hypothesis and is a hypothesis and not a theory. Finally, do you know Sheldon Cooper from the show The Big Bang Theory? The scientist Sheldon Cooper has a very interesting saying about astrology. He says that it is the mass cultural delusion that the sun's apparent position relative to arbitrarily defined constellations and the time of your birth somehow affects your personality. This is a very hilarious thing, and I'm going to post to you to leave you the YouTube scene of it in the comment section. So let's recap. All what we have said is the difference between each of them with examples and concluded to a clear comparison, and then we applied it to the horoscopes, which concluded that however whatever you believe in it or not, it remains a hypothesis until science proves the opposite. So here are my resources. I'm going to post them also in the description of the video on YouTube. Thank you for your time, and I hope this was helpful. Thank you.